The unexpected peace. The galaxy was once a place of constant war. Different factions fought for power, resources, and control. But one day, something unexpected happened. The human colonies, once scattered and divided, had successfully created an alliance with the mighty Galactic Empire. This was a huge step forward for peace. For years, there had been no war between the two, and it seemed like the galaxy had entered a new era. The Empire, known for its ruthlessness and strength, had finally agreed to work with the humans to maintain peace and stability. Ambassador Elena, a brave and intelligent diplomat from the human colonies, was one of the key figures in this alliance. She had worked hard to bring the two sides together, and her success had made her famous throughout the galaxy. Many saw her as a hero, the one who had achieved what no one else thought possible. She believed in diplomacy and the power of words over weapons. Elena had always dreamed of a galaxy where peace was not just an illusion, but a reality. Now, the time had come for a grand summit, a meeting of the greatest minds of the galaxy. The humans and the Empire were going to sign a new treaty that would strengthen their alliance and ensure peace for generations. This treaty was supposed to secure the future of all civilizations in the galaxy. It was Elena's greatest achievement, and she was determined to make sure it went smoothly. On the day of the summit, Elena stood in the grand hall of the Imperial Palace. The room was filled with representatives from all the human colonies, as well as high-ranking officers and diplomats from the Empire. The air was thick with anticipation. Elena wore her finest attire, a symbol of the peaceful future she had worked so hard to create. Her eyes were focused, determined, but deep down, she knew the weight of the moment. Everything she had fought for was about to be sealed in a few simple words. As she walked up to the podium, the room fell silent. The entire galaxy seemed to be watching, waiting for her to speak. Elena felt the pressure, but she pushed it aside. This was not the time for fear. This was the moment for hope. She began her speech, her voice steady and calm. "We stand on the edge of a new beginning," Elena said, her words echoing in the vast hall. "For centuries, we have fought and struggled. But today, we come together, not as enemies, but as partners. Together, we will create a future of peace and prosperity for all. This treaty is not just a piece of paper. It is the foundation of our new future." The crowd was silent for a moment, then erupted into applause. Elena smiled, proud of the progress they had made. But little did she know, not everyone in the room shared her optimism. In the far corner of the room, a figure sat in the shadows. Emperor Dracos, the ruler of the Galactic Empire, watched Elena closely. His face was unreadable, his eyes cold. While the humans celebrated, Dracos had his own plans. To him, the peace was merely a tool, a way to further strengthen his hold on the galaxy. He had agreed to the treaty, but only because it suited his own interests. He didn't care about peace. He cared about power. Dracos had always been a master manipulator. He knew that with peace, he could control the galaxy without firing a single shot. The Empire's military might was already unmatched. But with the humans' technological advancements, they could make a new kind of weapon, one that would guarantee his rule for centuries. Elena's dream of peace was nothing more than a means to an end for Dracos. As the summit continued, Elena and Dracos exchanged pleasantries, but there was a quiet tension between them. Elena sensed something was off. She could feel Dracos's cold gaze on her, but she couldn't figure out why. The moment the treaty was signed, the room erupted in applause again, and Elena's heart swelled with pride. She had done it. The treaty was real. Peace had been secured. But just as the celebrations began, a loud noise interrupted the festivities. The ground shook beneath them, and the lights flickered. People screamed, and chaos erupted throughout the hall. Elena turned, confused and scared. What was happening? She saw a group of armed soldiers burst into the room. They wore the insignia of the Galactic Empire, but their faces were not familiar. They were not part of the official delegation. Before Elena could react, a voice echoed through the hall. "This piece is over," the voice said, and the room fell silent again. It was Dracos's voice. Alina's heart raced as she looked toward the Emperor. His face was no longer hidden in the shadows. He stepped forward, a cold smile on his lips. "Peace was a lie," he said, his voice booming across the hall. "You thought we wanted peace. No, we wanted control. The Empire will never stop until we rule every star, every planet, every human colony." Alina's mind raced. What was happening? Why had Dracos done this? She had been so sure of the treaty, so certain of the future. But now, it seemed like everything was falling apart. In that moment, she realized that her greatest fear had come true. The peace she had worked so hard for was nothing more than an illusion. The Galactic Empire had just shattered everything. The furious ambassador. The moment the ground shook and the lights flickered, everything changed. Ambassador Alina stood frozen in the middle of the Imperial Hall, her heart pounding in her chest. The loud noise that had disrupted the summit echoed in her ears, and for a split second, she thought she might be dreaming. Was this some kind of attack? Was it a malfunction? No, it was much worse than that. As the strange soldiers stormed in, the Emperor's chilling voice rang out. "This peace is over," he had said, his words slicing through the air. Alina's blood ran cold. The room was filled with panic. People scrambled for safety, but Alina remained still. Her eyes locked onto Dracos, who was standing tall and cold at the front. The mask of diplomacy he had worn was gone. In its place, there was only a ruthless emperor determined to do whatever it took to keep control. In that instant, Alina's heart filled with fury. The peace she had fought for, the dreams she had worked to build, had been destroyed in one cruel move. Everything she had ever believed in, the value of words, the strength of diplomacy, had been shattered in front of her eyes. She could feel the anger rising inside her. How could Dracos betray her like this? How could he break the trust of the entire galaxy for his own gain? She thought she had known him. She thought the alliance was real, but now it felt like a carefully constructed lie. Alina had been trained to stay calm, to think with logic and reason. But now, all she could feel was rage. She had spent years negotiating this peace, ensuring that both sides would benefit. She had dreamed of a galaxy where her people could thrive alongside the Empire, where war was a thing of the past. But now she saw Dracos for what he truly was, a tyrant obsessed with power. Her mind raced as she struggled to make sense of what had just happened. This wasn't just an attack on the summit. It was an attack on everything she stood for. The Empire had betrayed her, and there was no going back. In that moment, she knew one thing for certain. She would not let this go unanswered. Despite the fear and confusion around her, Alina took a deep breath. She couldn't let her emotions cloud her judgment. Not yet. She had to act. She turned to face the group of people closest to her, her fellow diplomats and advisors. "Stay calm," she commanded, her voice firm. "We need to get to the communications center. I'm going to send a message to the Galactic Senate. This is not over." As she made her way toward the exit, her mind was already planning the next steps. She couldn't fight the Empire alone. Not without evidence, not without support. Her first priority was to warn the Senate and alert the leaders of the human colonies. She needed to tell them what had really happened. Dracos's betrayal had to be known. But as she walked through the corridors, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The soldiers who had stormed the room were everywhere. Their presence was more than just a threat. It was a statement. They were there to control, to show that they were in charge. Alina's steps quickened as she turned a corner, her heart racing. She couldn't afford to be caught now. If she was captured, everything would be lost. Her mind flicked back to the meeting in the hall. The smug expression on Dracos's face, the way he had spoken, with such certainty that peace had no place in his empire. It was clear to Alina now. He had never been interested in peace at all. This was just a strategy, a way for the Empire to gain the upper hand. And now that he had secured his power, he no longer needed to pretend. Alina clenched her fists. She had to stop him, no matter the cost. She wouldn't let Dracos' betrayal destroy everything she had worked for. The galaxy deserved better than this. The people of the human colonies deserved better than this, and she would make sure they got it. She finally reached the communications center, only to find the door locked. Alina quickly pulled out a small device from her belt, a tool designed to hack into secure systems. She had no time to waste. As she worked, the weight of the situation began to press down on her. She knew that the path ahead would not be easy. The Empire was strong, and their reach extended across the stars. But Alina had something Dracos didn't, the unwavering determination to fight for what was right. Finally, the door opened with a soft peep. Alina stepped inside and immediately accessed the communication channels. She had to send a message, no, a warning, to the Galactic Senate. She had to make them understand what had just happened. But as she typed out the message, a chilling realization hit her. It wasn't enough. A single message wouldn't stop Dracos. It wouldn't be enough to turn the tide. She needed something bigger. She needed allies. And that meant finding the rebels who had been fighting the Empire for years. Alina wasn't sure how, but she would contact them. She would gather anyone willing to stand up to Dracos and his empire. The fight was just beginning. As the message was sent, Alina's resolve hardened. The peace had been shattered, but she would not let Dracos win. Not without a fight. The fury inside her burned brighter than ever. A dangerous request. Alina's message to the Galactic Senate had been sent, but she knew it wasn't enough. The Senate was a vast network of political figures, many of whom were likely already in Dracos' pocket. She needed more than just words. She needed action. And as the hours ticked by, she realized that time was not on her side. Dracos would be consolidating his power, and if she didn't act fast, the entire galaxy would fall under his control. Alina paced back and forth in the small, dimly lit room where she had locked herself away. The walls felt like they were closing in on her, but there was no time to think about her own fear. She had one option left: the rebel forces. They had been fighting the Empire for years in the shadows, striking when they could, but they lacked the resources and support to win. They were fractured, disorganized, but Alina knew they were the only ones who could help her stop Dracos. The problem was, contacting them was dangerous. The Empire had spies everywhere. Even though Alina was a high-ranking diplomat, the rebels wouldn't trust her immediately. She had to be careful. Any wrong move, any slip-up, and the Empire would catch wind of her plan before she even had a chance to make it work. She sat down at the small communications terminal in the corner of the room. Her hands trembled slightly as she typed out the message. It was simple, direct. There was no time for games. Alina knew the risks, but she also knew that this was the only way to get the support she needed. The message read, "I know you've been watching. I need your help. The Empire's true intentions have been revealed. Dracos has broken the peace. We need to stop him before he destroys everything. Contact me if you want to fight back." She hesitated for a moment before pressing send. Would they trust her? Would they believe that she was truly on their side? Alina had no answers. She just hoped that somewhere out there, the rebels were watching and listening. Minutes felt like hours. The silence in the room was deafening. Alina couldn't sit still any longer. She had to move. The world outside felt like it was falling apart, and she was stuck in a small room, waiting. Then, as if the universe was testing her patience, the terminal beeped. A message had arrived. With a sense of urgency, Alina quickly read the reply. It wasn't much, just a few short words. "We know who you are. Meet us at the hidden base in Sector 12. Midnight." Relief washed over Alina, followed by a wave of fear. This was it. The rebels were real, and they were willing to meet her, but it wasn't going to be easy. The Empire was everywhere, and Sector 12 was far from safe. Alina knew the risks of leaving the safety of the Imperial Palace, but she had no choice. If she was going to stop Dracos, she had to take this step, no matter how dangerous it was. The next few hours were a blur. Alina prepared in silence, gathering the few supplies she would need. Her mind was racing with thoughts of the meeting. Would the rebels accept her? Could they really make a difference? Or was this all just a desperate gamble? She sneaked out of the palace under the cover of darkness, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't afford to be caught now. The Empire's forces were everywhere, and one wrong move would lead to her capture. Or worse, every shadow seemed to hide an enemy, and Alina had to remain vigilant. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she reached Sector 12. The hidden base was an old, abandoned station tucked away in a forgotten part of the galaxy. It was the perfect place to hide from the Empire. Alina approached cautiously, her eyes scanning every corner for signs of danger. But there was no sign of movement. It felt eerily quiet. Then, a voice broke the silence. Ambassador Alina. She turned sharply, her hand instinctively reaching for her weapon, but she quickly relaxed when she saw the figure in front of her. A tall man with dark, weathered eyes stood before her. He wore the simple, utilitarian gear of a rebel soldier. There was no time for pleasantries. "I'm Captain Zarek," the man said, his voice low and serious. "We've been watching you." The message was clear. "You want to stop Dracos." Alina nodded, not wasting any time on formalities. "I do, and I need your help. The Empire isn't just a threat to the human colonies. It's a threat to the entire galaxy. If we don't stop them now, there will be no stopping them. Draco's plans to use the peace he's broken to secure total control." Zarek's expression was unreadable. "We know. We've been tracking their movements for months, but we can't take them down alone. The Empire is too strong." Alina took a deep breath, her mind already working on a plan. "Then we need to work together. I know the Empire's weaknesses. I've been in their inner circle long enough. I can help you, but you need to trust me." Zarek hesitated. The distrust in his eyes was clear. Alina could see it. The rebels had been burned before. They had lost too many allies to deception, too many to betrayal. And yet, she couldn't back down now. She couldn't let Dracos win. "I'm not asking you to trust me blindly," Alina said, her voice steady. "But if you want to stop Dracos, we need to strike now, before he solidifies his control over the galaxy. We can't wait any longer." Zarek studied her for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "All right, we'll help you. But if this goes wrong, it's on you." The weight of his words hit Alina like a punch to the gut. This was the moment. There was no turning back. The rebels had agreed to join her, but the road ahead would be perilous. Together, they would have to fight back against the most powerful empire the galaxy had ever known. Alina knew the real battle was just beginning. The secret weapon, the rendezvous with the rebels, was just the beginning. Alina's heart was still racing from the tense meeting with Captain Zarek and the small group of rebel fighters. They had agreed to join forces, but now they faced an even greater challenge. Stopping Dracos. The Empire's power seemed unstoppable, but Alina knew that even the strongest empires had weaknesses. She had learned a dark secret from the time she spent within the Empire's high circles, and it was that secret that would give her a chance at victory, if she could stop it in time. In the hidden rebel base, Alina and Zarek stood over a holographic map of the galaxy. Several red dots blinked ominously on the map, each representing an Empire base or stronghold. But there was one in particular that caught Alina's attention. A massive installation, far from any known colonies, located on a distant and remote moon. It wasn't marked on any official records. Only a few high-ranking officials in the Empire knew about it. "This is where it all starts," Alina said quietly, her finger pointing to the moon. "Dracos has been hiding something there. A weapon capable of destroying entire planets." Zarek's brow furrowed as he studied the map. A planet-destroying weapon. That's a level of power the Empire has never shown. Alina nodded grimly. "That's because they've been hiding it. I believe they've finished its construction. It's a secret weapon, one that will give Dracos complete control over the galaxy. No one will dare oppose him if he has that kind of power. The room fell silent as the gravity of her words settled in. The rebels had fought for years, but this new weapon changed everything. If Dracos could use it, he wouldn't just crush resistance. He could extinguish entire star systems with a single command. Alina's blood ran cold at the thought. "We can't let this happen," Zarek said, his voice filled with determination. "If Dracos has this weapon, the galaxy will be under his rule for good. But we don't know exactly where the weapon is or how to destroy it," Alina pointed out. "I need to get inside the base. I know the layout of the Empire's facilities, but this one is different. It's not on any of the maps I've seen." Zarek paused, considering the danger. "We'll need a team, and even with a team, it'll be a suicide mission. The Empire will have every defense available. If you're captured, I won't be," Alina interrupted, her voice firm. "I'm going in alone. You and the rebels will create a distraction. While the Empire focuses on you, I'll slip in and gather information. If I can learn how the weapon works, maybe I can find a way to destroy it from within." Zarek didn't like the plan, but he knew there was no other choice. "It's a long shot, but it's all we've got. We'll cover your back. But if you're caught, I won't be," Alina repeated, more determined than ever. "I've worked in the Empire for years. I know how they think. I know their security protocols. I can do this." With the plan set in motion, Alina gathered a few supplies: a small communicator, a handheld device to disable security systems, and her knowledge of the Empire's operations were all she needed. The rebel base was abuzz with activity as preparations were made. Every member of the rebel crew knew the stakes. Failure meant the end of any hope for peace. As midnight approached, Alina prepared herself mentally for what lay ahead. This would be her most dangerous mission yet. If she succeeded, she could disable Dracos' weapon before it was used. But if she failed, the galaxy would fall into the Empire's grasp, and millions of innocent lives would be lost. The journey to the remote moon was long and treacherous, but Alina remained focused. She sat alone in the cockpit of a small, stealthy transport ship, her eyes fixed on the stars ahead. The ship's engines hummed quietly, barely a sound as it cut through the darkness of space. She couldn't afford to make a mistake. Not now. The moon was just as barren and lifeless as Alina had expected. A small facility, hidden deep within a rocky canyon, was the only sign of activity. She could see the faint glow of lights from the base as she approached. It was eerily quiet, but Alina knew better than to be fooled. The Empire was always watching. She landed the ship a few kilometers away from the base, in a small, shadowy crevice that hid her from view. The ground was cold and rocky beneath her boots as she stepped out. Every sense was on high alert, and the silence of the moon felt oppressive. She knew she didn't have much time before the Empire noticed her presence. The clock was ticking. Alina moved quickly, making her way to the entrance of the base. She used the device she had brought to disable the security systems, her fingers flying over the controls. The door to the facility slid open, and she slipped inside, unnoticed. The interior of the base was as sterile and cold as the Empire itself. Smooth metal walls, harsh lighting, and the hum of machines filled the air. Alina's footsteps echoed in the empty halls. She had to find the weapon. Quickly. She crept through the facility, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that the Empire's elite soldiers could be anywhere, but she had trained herself for this. She had been in similar facilities before, and she knew the layout of their systems. But this was different. This was a place where Dracos' darkest secrets were kept, and she had to find them before they found her. Minutes felt like hours as Alina made her way deeper into the base. Finally, she found it. A large sealed door guarded by two heavily armed soldiers. The room beyond was marked with the symbol of the Empire, but it was the weapon she was looking for. She could feel it in her bones. This was it. But as she moved closer, Alina realized the door wasn't just sealed, it was booby-trapped. A warning signal flashed on a nearby terminal. The room was locked down, and the alarm blared. She had been discovered. The Empire was closing in. The plan to sabotage. The alarm blared through the facility like a deafening roar, echoing in Alina's ears as she crouched behind a stack of crates, her breath shallow. The moment the security breach was detected, the Empire's forces sprang into action. Footsteps pounded down the corridor. She could hear them. Imperial soldiers, fast and organized, coming her way. Alina's heart raced, her pulse thundering in her chest. She had to move, and fast. She was so close to the weapon, so close to learning how to destroy it. But now she couldn't afford to stay hidden. The soldiers would find her if she did. She had to get out of the facility, back to the rebels, and bring them the crucial information that could turn the tide of this war. With a deep breath, Alina steeled herself. There was no turning back now. She quickly slid across the floor, avoiding the main hallway, and ducked into a maintenance shaft she knew was nearby. The shaft was narrow, cramped, and smelled of oil and old metal. It wasn't comfortable, but it was perfect for escaping without being seen. As she crawled through the dimly lit ventilation system, Alina's mind raced. The weapon was real. She had seen it with her own eyes. A massive cannon, surrounded by layers of security. It was capable of obliterating entire planets. If Dracos unleashed it, no one in the galaxy would be safe. Alina knew that she couldn't allow that to happen. But how could she sabotage a weapon like that? The thought of disabling it from the inside seemed impossible. If she tried to break it, she risked destroying herself in the process. Yet she couldn't let fear stop her. She had to find a way, no matter what. Her mind flickered back to the rebel base. She had to warn them. She had to get back to Zarek and the others, explain the situation, and formulate a plan to destroy the weapon before Dracos had the chance to use it. After what felt like an eternity, Alina reached the end of the ventilation shaft. She peeked out into the hallway. No soldiers in sight. She carefully stepped out, moving quickly and quietly, until she reached the exit. She pushed open the door and sprinted toward the ship she had landed earlier. But just as she reached the ship, she heard a voice. "Going somewhere, Ambassador." Alina froze. She turned slowly, dread creeping up her spine. Standing behind her, his face illuminated by the harsh lights of the landing bay, was a figure she hadn't expected to see. It was Captain Valen, one of the Empire's top commanders. Alina had known him for years, having worked with him during some of the most delicate diplomatic missions. But now, standing in front of her, he was no longer an ally. He was her enemy. "Valen," Alina whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. "What are you doing here?" He smiled, a cold, calculating smile. "I should ask you the same thing. You think you can just walk in here, destroy everything the Empire's worked for, and walk out? I know your game, Alina. You've always been a spy, a liar. The Empire has known about you for a long time." Alina's stomach dropped. She had been so careful, so sure that her plans had gone unnoticed. But now it seemed the Empire had been watching her every step. "You're wrong," she said quickly, trying to stay calm. "I'm not here to destroy anything. I'm here to stop Dracos. He's gone too far. You don't know what he's planning. He's building a weapon that could destroy the entire galaxy." Valen raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "I know exactly what he's planning. And it's going to happen. You're just too late to stop it." Alina's mind raced. She needed to act. She couldn't let Valen take her back to the Empire. The rebels needed her. They needed the information she had. But she couldn't take on Valen alone. He was too strong, too well-trained. "I won't let you stop me," Alina said, her voice low but filled with defiance. She quickly reached for the small communicator on her belt. "Zarek, I need you. Now." Valen's eyes narrowed as he took a step toward her. "Don't bother. Your little rebellion is finished. The Empire has already won." But Alina wasn't listening anymore. She pressed the button on the communicator, sending a coded message to the rebels. It was a signal, a plan for them to act. She wasn't going to leave this up to chance. She wasn't going to let Dracos win. Not without a fight. "I won't give up," she said fiercely, backing away from Valen, trying to buy time. "I will stop Dracos, even if it costs me everything." Suddenly, an explosion rocked the facility. The ground shook violently, and Valen's attention was momentarily distracted. Elena seized the opportunity, rushing past him, and diving into her ship. She didn't look back. The explosion had been the rebels' doing. They had followed her signal and created the distraction she needed. As the ship's engines roared to life, Elena quickly set a course for the hidden rebel base. Her heart pounded, but there was no time to rest. The fight wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The betrayal. Elena's hands shook as she steered the small rebel ship toward the hidden base, her mind still reeling from the close call with Captain Valen. The explosion had bought her just enough time to escape, but she knew she hadn't outrun the danger. The Empire would be hunting her down, and it wouldn't be long before they realized the rebels were involved. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The ship's sensors showed no signs of pursuit, but Elena knew better than to trust the silence. There were always hidden eyes, always spies, waiting for the right moment to strike. She had been in the Empire long enough to recognize when something felt off. As she approached the rebel base, the dark silhouette of the station loomed against the stars, a tiny flicker of hope in an ocean of despair. The ship's systems pinged, signaling her arrival. But as Elena prepared to land, the air around her seemed to thicken, the tension palpable. "Zarek, this is Elena. I'm coming in. Prepare for immediate debrief," she spoke into the comm, her voice steadied despite the knot in her stomach. "Understood," came Zarek's voice in reply, but something about the way he said it didn't sit right with her. It was too quick, too cold. There was a moment of hesitation, but it was gone before Elena could fully register it. She brushed the feeling aside. She was exhausted, on edge, and the weight of everything she had just been through was starting to catch up with her. She had to focus. She touched down gently on the landing pad, the ship's engines quieting as she powered them down. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and Elena stepped out, ready to share everything. The Empire's plans, the weapon, Valen's betrayal. But as her boots hit the ground, she immediately noticed something was wrong. The base was eerily quiet. The usual hum of activity was missing. No soldiers, no chatter, nothing. Zarek appeared from the shadows, his face grim, his posture tense. Elena felt a sudden pang of unease. This wasn't how things were supposed to be. "You're back," Zarek said, his voice carefully neutral. "You got the intel." Elena nodded, moving toward him. "Yes. I've seen the weapon. Dracos is planning to deploy it soon. If we don't act fast, it could be the end of everything." She handed him the small data chip she'd stolen from the facility, the one containing the blueprints and schematics for the Empire's secret weapon. "We need to destroy it now, before Dracos can use it." Zarek took the chip without a word, his fingers brushing hers as he gripped it. But instead of turning to lead her to the briefing room, Zarek stayed still, his eyes narrowing. Elena caught a flicker of something in his gaze, something dark and unreadable. For the first time, doubt crept into her mind. "What's going on, Zarek?" Elena asked, her voice sharper than she intended. "Why is everyone so quiet? Where's the rest of the team?" Zarek hesitated, his jaw tightening. He didn't meet her eyes. "They're not here right now." Elena's instincts screamed at her to leave, but she ignored them, trying to force some clarity into the situation. "Not here. What are you talking about?" Without warning, Zarek's face hardened, and his hand shot out, grabbing Elena's arm. She flinched, instinctively trying to pull away, but his grip tightened. "Zarek?" she asked, the tension between them palpable. Her mind raced. Something wasn't right, but she couldn't pinpoint it. Her eyes darted around, searching for any sign of danger, but all she saw was the same cold, empty space. "You were never meant to win, Elena," Zarek said quietly, his voice barely a whisper. "You're not the first diplomat the Empire has fooled, and you won't be the last." Elena's breath caught in her throat. "What are you saying?" Zarek's expression shifted, and his eyes turned steely. He wasn't the ally she had fought alongside in the shadows for so long. No, this was someone else, a person with a different agenda. He wasn't a rebel. He was something far worse. "Elena, you're a fool if you think the Empire didn't have spies in the rebellion," he said, his voice growing colder. "You're just a pawn in a much bigger game. And now your usefulness has come to an end." Before she could react, the doors behind her slammed shut with a resounding crash. Elena whipped around, her hand flying to the sidearm at her waist. But it was too late. A group of armed men and women emerged from the shadows, their faces masked, their uniforms unmistakable. Imperial soldiers. Elena's heart dropped as she recognized the insignia on their uniforms, the same one Valen had worn. Zarek had betrayed her, just like he had betrayed the entire rebellion. "You've been working for the Empire this whole time," Elena whispered, her voice shaking with disbelief. "You were never with us." Zarek smiled, a bitter, twisted grin. "No, I've always been with the Empire. They've promised me power, control, everything I've ever wanted. And now, Elena, I have you." In that instant, everything Elena had fought for seemed to crumble. The rebels she had trusted, the fight she had fought was righteous. All of it had been a lie. The true enemy had been hiding in plain sight. Zarek had sold her out, and with him, the fate of the rebellion was sealed. "Take her," Zarek ordered coldly, stepping aside as the soldiers moved in. "She's the Empire's now." Elena stood frozen, her mind struggling to process the betrayal. The walls felt like they were closing in, the air thick with the weight of her failure. But even as the soldiers approached, something inside her sparked, an ember of defiance she wouldn't let go of. She had been betrayed, yes, but that didn't mean the fight was over. Not yet. The furious showdown. The metallic clang of chains echoed through the cold, sterile cell as Elena's hands were bound to the wall. Her heart pounded in her chest, the pulse of betrayal still fresh in her mind. Zarek's treachery stung deeply. He had been her ally, her confidant. But now, here she was, a prisoner of the Empire. The rebels she had fought for had been shattered, and the weapon she had hoped to destroy loomed on the horizon, ready to bring destruction to the galaxy. The cell was small, dimly lit, and the walls felt like they were closing in. Elena's mind raced. She had to get out. She had to stop Dracos. She couldn't let the Empire win. The thought of everything she had worked for being undone made her blood boil. But she knew she had one last chance. She could still escape. She could still stop Dracos. The sound of footsteps interrupted her thoughts. The door to her cell opened slowly, and in stepped Captain Valen, his face colder than she had ever seen it before. He wasn't here to gloat. He wasn't here to rub her defeat in her face. No, there was something else behind his eyes, something Elena couldn't quite place. "Ambassador Elena," Valen said, his voice smooth, almost pitying. "You were a fool to think you could defeat the Empire. The weapon is ready. Dracos has already set his plan in motion. There's nothing left for you to do." Elena stared back at him, her gaze unwavering. She refused to let him see the fear that stirred inside her. "You're wrong, Valen. There's always something I can do. I've been underestimated my whole life, but I won't let the Empire win." Valen's lips curled into a small smile. "Is that so? I thought you had learned your lesson by now. You can't stop us. The weapon is unstoppable. You're powerless." Elena didn't reply immediately. Her mind was working quickly, calculating every move, every potential escape route. She could feel the heat rising inside her. She had been pushed too far, betrayed by someone she had trusted, locked in a cage meant to break her. But she would not be broken. Not now. She met Valen's gaze directly. "I'll never stop fighting, no matter how many of you stand in my way. You can lock me up, but I will never give up." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, there was silence between them. Valen's expression faltered, just for a split second. Then he turned and walked out of the room, leaving her alone with her thoughts. It felt like an eternity, but Elena was determined. She wasn't just a diplomat. She was a fighter, a survivor, and no matter how dark the path ahead seemed, she would find a way to stop Dracos. A few hours passed. Elena's mind remained focused on the weapon, on the chaos Dracos was about to unleash. She had no idea what her next move would be, but she knew she had one shot left. If she couldn't stop the weapon, if she couldn't warn the galaxy in time, then all would be lost. She had to find a way. The door to her cell opened again, but this time, it wasn't Valen. A different figure stepped inside. Zarek. Elena's pulse quickened as she saw him. Betrayal. Anger. Those emotions surged through her again, but she forced them down. There was no room for that now. She needed to think, to survive. Zarek walked toward her, his expression unreadable. He stopped just a few feet away and stood there in silence, as if considering something. "Elena," he began, his voice low, his words heavy with an unspoken weight. "I never wanted it to be like this. But the Empire, they offered me power, a future where I could control my own destiny. I thought you understood that. But now, I see things differently." Elena's mind raced, the sudden shift in his tone catching her off guard. She couldn't allow herself to get caught up in his words again, not after everything he had done. She knew better than to trust him now. "You sold me out, Zarek. You sold out everyone. The rebels, your allies, your people. You can't take that back." Zarek lowered his gaze, a shadow of regret flickering across his face, but it was gone before Elena could fully process it. "Maybe I did. Maybe I was weak. But now, I want to help you." Elena frowned, her mind working through the possibilities. Was he lying? Was this another trick, another trap to pull her deeper into the Empire's web? Or was he telling the truth? "There's no time for second chances," she replied, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "Dracos is going to destroy everything. You can't help me now." Zarek stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can. I know where they're keeping the weapon. I know how to destroy it. But I need your help." Elena's heart skipped a beat. This was it. Her chance to stop Dracos, to end the Empire's reign of terror once and for all. "You know how?" she asked, her voice tight with urgency. Zarek nodded slowly. "The weapon is hidden inside a vault, sealed and protected by the Empire's most advanced systems. But I've had access to the codes. I can get us inside. We just need to act fast before they deploy it." Elena stared at him, her thoughts racing. Could she trust him? Could she risk everything on the word of a man who had betrayed her? But in that moment, something shifted inside her. Zarek's face was filled with a look she hadn't seen before, sincerity, guilt, and maybe even a glimmer of redemption. It was enough to make her take the risk. "We'll do it," Elena said, her voice filled with determination. "We'll stop Dracos. Together." The two of them hurried through the corridors, knowing that the galaxy's future rested on their shoulders. Zarek led the way, and Elena followed, her mind focused entirely on the mission ahead. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, Elena felt the faintest spark of hope. As they reached the vault, the silence was deafening. Elena's heart pounded as Zarek entered the codes. The massive doors slowly began to open, revealing the weapon that could end everything. Elena took a deep breath and stepped forward, knowing that the final showdown was just beginning. This was her last chance to fight back, to save the galaxy, to stop Dracos and his empire once and for all. And she would not fail.